Joining me now here in the studio, Suzanne Craig, investigative reporter for the New York Times, and Christy Greenberg, former federal prosecutor and an MSNBC legal analyst. Both have been in the courthouse this week, as I thank you both for being here. Sue, you sat through some cringeworthy sound bites there. No, I'm sorry, that was from Dasha's report. Some cringeworthy moments this week with Stormy Daniels in the courtroom describing her tryst, her alleged tryst with Donald Trump back in 2006. Did she leave the stand with you thinking the jury needed to hear all that?
I'm not sure they needed to hear it all. I mean, I think that part of I think we're going to be discussing it for a while, and people are going to look back on that first day of testimony. And I kind of want to break them up because I think Tuesday was one day, and then we came back from a break on Thursday, and she was very strong on cross-examination. But on Tuesday, I think what was important about it is she did take jurors through all the nitty-gritty, and that was the story that Donald Trump was trying to keep out of the paper. That was the catch-and-kill scheme. So in one way, it was important that they understood it, but it may have gone too far. But I think it's important that they understand what he was trying to make sure didn't get published. And I don't think any of them are under any illusion about it now, about what happened. But on Thursday, she really came back, and she was really strong with Susan Neckles.
So she seemed less nervous.
She was less nervous, and she was very forceful. And I actually have got written down, if I can read it rather than paraphrasing it, just some of their exchanges, because I thought they were so good. Susan Neckles is cross-examining her, so Donald Trump's lawyer, and they are going back and forth.
She's going at her pretty hard.
And Stormy's not giving an inch. In one instance, Susan Neckles says, "But you, to this day, continue to make money to sell a story that you promised will put President Trump in jail, right?" And she says, "No." "Well, isn't it a fact that you're posting on social media how you're going to be instrumental in putting President Trump in jail? Show me where I said instrumental in putting Donald Trump in jail." And Susan Neckles couldn't produce the post. She produced something that didn't say that. It said something else. And Daniels says, "I don't see instrumental or jail there. You're putting words in my mouth." And those sort of exchanges, I really think when I look back at it, you know, on a Saturday, that's what I remember about the week. I remember a very defiant Stormy Daniels, just giving as good as she got.
If you're remembering it, that's probably what stayed with these jurors over this weekend as they reflect as well.
Right. And I think it's interesting because I think maybe on Tuesday, there's going to be debate about whether that went too far. And I think when this case will go on appeal, I think that day is going to be memorialized on appeal, because I think that there's a feeling that the jury maybe heard too much. But I think on Thursday, in terms of just whatever stumbles the jury may have seen or may have felt was made, if they thought anything, she came back to it on Thursday really well.
So at one point, Stormy Daniels described details of the alleged one-night stand. And again, Trump's attorney, Susan Neckles, asked, "You made this all up?" Daniels responded, "No." Christy, how successful do you think she was at deflecting the defense attempts to portray her as an extortionist, essentially, who keeps changing her story?
I thought Daniels was at her best when Susan Neckles really attacked her for being a porn star, because Susan Neckles equated being a porn star with being a liar. And that just failed. At one point, she asked the question, "You have a lot of experience making up phony stories about sex." And Daniels said, "Wow, that's not how I would put it. The sex in the films actually is very real, just like what happened to me in that room." And it was such a moment. Susan Neckles also equated being a porn star with being a slut. That failed too. And I do think that line of cross really could have alienated the jury. I know it certainly alienated me, and there were 5 women on that jury who may not have been very comfortable with that line of cross. The one thing I think that Susan Neckles was successful at in the cross was really, driving home the point that Stormy Daniels claimed that she really wasn't motivated by money here, and that she really was motivated more to protect her family in selling the story. That didn't really come across very clearly. I will say I didn't really buy that. I thought she was motivated by money, but so what? So what? I can believe that she was motivated by money to sell her story, and that her story was real at the same time. So I didn't think the cross-examination was really that effective, and I thought she did very well on the whole.
And the fact that Donald Trump, who never wanted this story out there, as you pointed out, is sitting feet away from her, watching her tell this story. What was his demeanor like?
For most of the court proceeding, we can see him. Christy and I were actually sitting close to each other or next to each other during the testimony, and we can see him. For most of it, he's got his eyes closed. So that's one thing, and I think that that's significant because the court picks up on that. Jurors are looking at him. Of course, there's the most famous man in the world. He's a former U.S. president, and I think that that sends a message to the court. So I think that that was one thing. And at one point, he was actually muttering. He was getting upset about what she was saying. So I think
he was cursing at one point.
He was cursing. Yeah. And the court picks up on that. So I think that those are important things. Sometimes his demeanor, we make jokes about it, but it has an impact on the jurors.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Republican Party and co-founder of the Lincoln Project, and I welcome you both. Alencia, top Republicans are following Trump's lead, not committing to accept the election results. Are they trying to lay the groundwork now to ensure a dragged-out legal battle?
Well, listen, it's more than laying the groundwork for a drowned-out legal battle. We all were here watching January 6th. This is the same rhetoric that Trump was using then, and he's just fueling the flames even earlier, right? And the reality is, as he continues to delay all of the measures to hold him accountable, he is also signaling to his supporters that they will be above the law should he become president, or if he's not president, that they should take matters into their own hands. So this is extremely dangerous, and people shouldn't just say, oh, don't believe him, he's not going to do it. Donald Trump has done this before, and we know that he's going to only ratchet up how extreme he's going to get if he doesn't win.
Jennifer, there's a Quinnipiac University survey. It happened in March, in which it found 2/3 of voters were very or somewhat confident that votes will be accurately counted in November. But that number drops to just 45% of Republicans. Do you see reason to sound the alarm about this trickle-down effect that Trump's rhetoric is having?
Absolutely, yes. To Alicia's point, this idea of trying to fan the flames of election denial, voter denial, this is the core of the RNC and the Republican parties and Donald Trump's election message. It's not about the economy. It's not about the border. It's not about any of these other things. It's about getting their base, their party members, ready to fight against a loss. The RNC is not running a campaign operation. They are running an election disruption operation. You can see it in who they brought in as staff. You can see it in the background of the attorneys that they have there, the message that they're filtering down to their state and county committees. They are prepared. It's conscious and it's intentional. And anybody who doesn't take it seriously right now is just going to make it even easier for them to be successful at this when the time comes.
Yeah, well, bet you both $10 that if Donald Trump wins the election in November, fair and square, there'll be no talk about this. Everything happened just fair and square. But anyway, Alencia, during his CNN interview, President Biden was asked what advice former President Obama gave him. And here's what he said. Take a listen.
Keep doing what I'm doing, and to make sure that what his advice is, the same advice I sort of gave him when I was vice president. Look, you've got to organize, block and tackle, people knocking on doors, putting up signs. We have over 1.5 million individual contributors in America.
So look, he's describing a traditional grassroots campaign, slow and steady. Is that enough this year, Alencia?
Listen, I don't think it needs to be slow and steady, but it needs to be consistent. And yes, I actually agree that grassroots is what actually wins. As I've worked on 4 different presidential campaigns, no amount of national messaging is going to outperform the actual voter-to-voter contact, the door knocking, the texting, the phone banking, the actually listening to voters and going into states. And listen, he was talking about this in Wisconsin while his opponent is slumped over looking tired in a trial. And so it is proven to work. President Obama was an amazing organizer. He served as his vice president. That is how President Biden won in 2020. He was able to organize in a pandemic. And we know that when we get on the ground and talk about the issues and relate directly to voters, it does move the needle.
You know, and I'm going to pick up on what you've just said here, Lindsay, with this. It's a stark campaign split screen this week. You have Donald Trump in court for the hush money trial charged with contempt. And then you have President Biden giving a somber speech on Holocaust remembrance. And before we discuss the split screen of Trump, you know, quietly sitting and closing his eyes in court while President Biden was battling criticism over campus protests, is that what we are in for over the next 177 days? One fraught split screen after another in unusual circumstances?
It is, actually. And it's actually going to give President Biden the opportunity to talk about the clear issues that are happening, which, of course, is the concern around the Israel-Hamas war, which will actually be a big issue for a lot of Democratic voters. But he's also able to talk about issues of the economy, issues of abortion. Him and his vice president have gone to Arizona and Florida for battlegrounds on these issues. While, again, former President Trump is literally slumped over in a New York courtroom, one of many courtrooms we will see him in this year. And that's slowing down fundraising. That's slowing down him talking to voters, which is a good thing for us. But it also paints a stark national contrast that will be easier for us to talk about as it comes closer to November.
So, Jennifer, Jeff Duncan, the former Republican lieutenant governor of Georgia, announced he's endorsing President Biden this week. And he ended his op-ed with, quote, "Unlike Trump, I've belonged to the GOP my entire life. This November, I am voting for a decent person I disagree with on policy over a criminal defendant without a moral compass." Is this a lone, responsible Republican voice, or do you think others will follow?
Well, so far, Jeff Duncan is a lone responsible Republican voice, for sure. We're not seeing a lot of this from any direction of the Republican Party. I think you might see a couple more, but I don't anticipate that there's going to be some huge movement. You know, the most important thing that Jeff Duncan and others like him who are willing to come forward can do is to influence those Republicans who are standing on the line, who are on the wall, right? It's less important that we have hundreds of known Republican names come forward with op-eds. It's more important that those who do help to move the thousands and millions of Republicans that Joe Biden is going to need to win. I hope we see Jeff Duncan out there campaigning for President Biden.